The council chamber on Unity Prime Station hummed with the usual sounds of galactic politics translators chirping, delegates arguing, and the soft glow of holographic displays showing trade routes and territorial disputes across known space ambassador. Zixter of the Kethrian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes and glanced around the massive circular room, his four eyes scanning the familiar arrangement of seats and platforms, designed to accommodate hundreds of different species from across the galaxy. Something felt different today, though he couldn't quite place what bothered him about the morning. Session High Chancellor Veshinin called the assembly to order with 3 sharp taps of his graviton staff, and the various species settled into their designated areas, the aquatic Valnori in their water-filled chambers, the crystalline Dravics on their heated platforms, the insectoid Kelthran clustering in their elevated sections. We begin with standard reports from all sectors, Vexinen announced, his voice carrying through the chamber's advanced acoustic systems. Morning dragged on with typical bureaucratic matters, trade disputes between mining colonies, requests for infrastructure funding, debates over shipping lane regulation. Shither found his attention drifting, as it often did during these tedious sessions. It was only when the clerk called for reports from the human delegation that something unusual happened. No. One answered. The clerk called again, her tentacles waving in slight confusion. Human representatives, please provide your sector updates. Silence filled the space where humans normally sat. Zixter looked toward the human section for the first time that morning and noticed what his subconscious had been trying to tell him. Every single human seat stood empty, not just 1 or 2 absent delegates, but every human position in the entire council chamber. Where are the humans? Someone from the Kelthran section clicked out. Chancellor Vexinen's expression showed mild annoyance rather than concern. Perhaps they're running late. We'll move forward with other business. But the clerk was checking her datapad now, her movements becoming more agitated. Chancellor, I'm showing that all human delegations have filed departure notices. Every embassy has been closed, and all human council staff submitted resignations 3 days ago. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Though most delegates seemed more puzzled than worried, Zixter felt a small tickle of unease in his throat sacs but pushed it aside. Departed? Vexinen repeated, his tone suggesting he found this more irritating than alarming. Did they provide a reason? The clerk scrolled through her datapad. The official notices simply state that humanity is withdrawing from all council activities and recalling all personnel from council space. There are no demands listed, no complaints filed. Just clean departure paperwork. How dramatic, Ambassador Krethnar growled from the military section, his scaled head shaking. Humans always were overly emotional about minor disagreements. Several other delegates chittered or hummed their agreements. Thor remembered the last major session 3 weeks ago when the council had voted down another human proposal, something about updating emergency response protocols or medical research funding. He couldn't quite recall the details. The human ambassador at the time, a woman named Helen Price, had stood at the podium and spoken for nearly 10 minutes. He hadn't really listened to her words. Human proposals rarely passed anyway, since their species held such a small percentage of council votes now. He tried to remember what she had said, and fragments of her speech came back to him through his translator's memory banks. We have tried for 47 years to be partners in this council. We have offered our research freely, our protection willingly, our friendship openly. But at every turn, we have been dismissed, overruled, and treated not as equals but as servants. At the time, Zixter had found her tone unnecessarily harsh. After all, humans were welcome in the council. No one had forced them to leave. They simply needed to understand their place as one of the younger species in galactic politics. When we are heard, it is with condescension, Price's voice echoed in his memory. When we contribute, It is expected rather than appreciated. When we warn of dangers, we are called alarmist. When we celebrate our successes, we are called arrogant. She had continued with a list of human achievements that Zixter had barely paid attention to: medical breakthroughs, agricultural innovations, peacekeeping operations, standard contributions that many species made nothing special. So we will make this simple. Price had concluded. Humanity formally requests equal voting power proportional to our contributions rather than just our population. We request that human expertise be consulted before decisions affecting sectors where humans provide majority support. And we request basic respect as partners rather than subordinates. The council had voted down all three requests within Minuteshikster had voted against them himself, thinking it was ridiculous for such a small species to demand special treatment. Price had stood there at the podium for a long moment after the vote, her face unreadable in that strange way humans had. Then she had simply nodded once, gathered her materials, and walked out of the chamber. That was 3 weeks ago. Now every human was gone. Should we send a delegation to human space to discuss their return? Someone suggested. Chancellor Vexinen waved a dismissive hand. Let them cool off for a few weeks. They'll realize they need the council more than we need them. In the meantime, we have actual business to attend to. The session continued as if nothing significant had happened. Ed Zither tried to focus on the debates and votes, but his mind kept wandering to that empty section where humans used to sit. There had been a human military liaison named Lisa Grant, who always arrived early and stayed late, working with various species on defense coordination, a merchant fleet coordinator called Daniel Hayes, who somehow kept the complicated web of trade routes running smoothly despite constant conflicts between rival shipping companies, and medical researcher Kevin Morgan, who had treated Zixter's own offspring during a dangerous infection 2 years ago, but surely their absence wouldn't matter much. The council had existed for thousands of years. Before humans joined, it would continue just fine without them. As the session ended and delegates filed out, Zixter passed by the human section and noticed something odd. The desks were completely clean, no forgotten datapads, no personal items, no signs that anyone would be returning. Everything had been removed with careful precision outside the station's main viewport. He caught a glimpse of a ship bearing human markings. The transport vessel was already at the edge of scanner range, preparing to jump to faster than light speed on its bridge. Captain Richard Cole took one last look at Unity Prime Station through the view screen. 47 years his people had served on that station. 47 years of trying to build something better. He felt no anger, just a deep tiredness that came from trying too hard for too long. All personnel accounted for. Sir, his first officer reported, we're the last human ship leaving council space. Then let's go home. Cole said quietly. The ship jumped to hyperspace, and the last human presence vanished from council territory behind them. The Galactic Council continued its session, unaware that they had just lost something far more valuable than they could possibly imagine. The quiet ones were gone, and soon the galaxy would learn what their silence truly meant. 2 months had passed since the humans left, and Dr. Schenker rushed through the corridors of Velner Prime Medical Center with growing panic tightening her breathing sacs. The plague outbreak that started in the lower districts 3 weeks ago should have been contained by now. Standard protocols always worked for respiratory infections like this one, except the protocols weren't working. Her assistant met her at the isolation ward entrance, his membrane flickering with distress. We've lost another 40 patients in the night shift. The treatment synthesis keeps failing, and I don't understand why. Shenka pulled up the medical database on her portable terminal and scrolled through the treatment procedures, searching for something they had missed. That's when she saw it. A small notation at the bottom of nearly every successful plague treatment protocol they had used for the past 30 years. based on human research methodology developed by Dr. Kevin Morgan and Dr. Amy Rodriguez. Human research, human methods, humans who were no longer here to ask for help. She felt her throat sacs constrict as she realized the terrible truth. They had been following human-designed treatments for so long that no one remembered how to develop new ones from scratch. The current plague was a mutation that didn't match any existing protocol. And without human researchers to adapt their methods, the Velnori medical community was helpless. "Get me the original research files," she ordered. "Maybe we can figure out how the humans did it." But when her assistant pulled up the files, they found detailed results and procedures, but not the underlying reasoning or methodology that would allow them to create new treatments. The humans had shared their conclusions freely, but kept their problem-solving processes protected on the other side of the sector. Admiral Krethner stared at the tactical display in his command center and felt his blood run cold. 3 merchant convoys had been attacked by pirates in the past week. 12 civilian ships destroyed, hundreds dead, millions in cargo stolen. The pirate raiders were operating with impunity in areas that had been completely safe for decades. Why aren't our patrol routes catching them? He demanded his tactical officer brought up a star map showing the security grid. "Sir, these patrol routes were designed by human strategists. They somehow predicted pirate behavior patterns with incredible accuracy. But now that the pirates have adapted and we don't have human analysts to update our strategies," Krethner wanted to argue. But the evidence was damning. Every successful anti-piracy operation for the past 20 years had relied on human tactical planning. A human military advisor named Timothy Ross had revolutionized their defense strategies, and Commander Lisa Grant had trained an entire generation of council officers in rapid response techniques. Without them, the military was reverting to old, predictable patterns that criminals could easily exploit. Reports flooded in from across council space, each one adding to the growing catastrophe. Agricultural colonies on 3 different worlds reported crop failures. Advanced farming techniques they relied on came from human agronomist Nicole Sanders, who had spent 15 years teaching council species how to grow food in harsh environments. Without her ongoing guidance, the systems were breaking down. Scientific research stations sent desperate messages. Projects were stalling because critical collaboration with human experts had ended. Human scientists had apparently been participating in 70% of all active research initiatives, serving as bridges between different species methodologies. Financial markets showed increasing volatility. The complex trading algorithms and economic stabilization programs had been maintained by human analysts who somehow understood the intricate relationships between hundreds of different species. Academy's environmental monitoring systems on 14 planets began showing critical failures. A junior technician discovered that a human engineer named Brandon Walsh had designed the core diagnostic software, and without regular updates from him, the systems couldn't adapt to changing conditions. Ambassador Zixter sat in his private quarters, reviewing report after report, his 4 eyes burning with exhaustion and growing horror. A young analyst had provided him with devastating statistics that he couldn't ignore. Humans had handled 34% of all emergency response operations across council space, 67% of major medical innovations in the past 3 decades had human researchers as primary or contributing developers. 41% of critical infrastructure maintenance was performed by human engineers and technicians, and humans represented only 3% of the council's total population. How had one species managed to become so deeply embedded in so many essential systems? The answer, as he reviewed more data, became painfully clear. Humans had volunteered for every difficult, dangerous, or tedious job that other species avoided. They took assignments in plague zones, pirate-infested space, harsh colony worlds, and conflict areas. They worked longer hours, shared their knowledge freely, and never demanded special recognition. The council had accepted their contributions as if they were tribute from a subordinate species rather than gifts from an equal partner. Sixter remembered voting against human proposals 17 times in his tenure as ambassador. He pulled up the archived proposals and read them with new eyes that finally saw what he had missed. Every single one had been practical, well-researched, and designed to improve council operations. One proposal would have created redundant emergency response systems, exactly what they needed now. Another would have established cross-species training programs so that critical knowledge wouldn't be concentrated in a single species, a program that would have prevented their current crisis. A third had suggested regular efficiency audits of council operations, audits that would have revealed how dependent they had become on human labor. He had dismissed all of them as unnecessary bureaucracy. The truth was worse than that. He had dismissed them because they came from humans. Now, those same humans were gone, and the entire galactic civilization was starting to crumble without them. Emergency council sessions became shouting matches. Species blamed each other for the growing disasters. Trade agreements collapsed as shipping lanes became too dangerous. Medical facilities across dozens of worlds struggled with outbreaks they couldn't control. Wars that had been prevented by human peacekeepers erupted into violence. The Draviks and Kelthran, whose border disputes had been mediated by human negotiator Jason Webb for 15 years, were now skirmishing daily. Chancellor Vexinen tried to maintain order, but even he couldn't deny the reality anymore. We need to contact the humans, he finally admitted during a crisis session. Send a diplomatic delegation to human space and request their return. The delegation left within hours. 3 ambassadors from species that had worked closely with humans. Bearing official apologies and promises of better treatment, they arrived at the boundary of human space 2 days later. Their hails were answered immediately by a human defense station. "This is Captain Vincent Shaw of the Human Border Guard." A voice came through. "State your business." The lead ambassador, trying to sound diplomatic despite his desperation, explained, "We come on behalf of the Galactic Council to discuss humanity's return to Council space. We acknowledge that mistakes were made and wish to negotiate." There was a long pause. Then Captain Shaw's response came, polite but absolutely final. "Humanity thanks the Council for its message. However, we are not interested in negotiations at this time. Please return to Council space." "But you don't understand," the ambassador started. "We understand perfectly," Shaw interrupted. "For 47 years we explained, warned, requested, and contributed. For 47 years we were ignored, dismissed, and taken for granted. We have nothing more to say to the Council. Goodbye." The communication channel closed. The delegation tried for 3 more days to get through. Every attempt was politely but firmly refused when they returned to Unity Prime Station. The council chamber fell silent as the lead ambassador delivered his report. Humanity wasn't interested in coming back. Not, maybe not ever. Ambassador Zixter looked around the chamber and saw the same realization dawning on every face. They had broken something precious through their arrogance and neglect. Now they would have to live with the consequences. Question was, could galactic civilization survive without the quiet species who had held so much of it together? The answer was becoming clearer with each passing day, and it terrified them all. The border station between Draviks and Kelthran space exploded in a brilliant flash of plasma fire, taking 300 lives with a general. Fixner watched from his command ship as the conflict he had started 3 days ago spiraled completely out of control. What began as a minor territorial dispute had erupted into full-scale war, because no one was there to stop it for 15 years. Human negotiator Jason Webb had mediated every disagreement between the Draviks and Kelthran. Peoples he had possessed an uncanny ability to find compromises that satisfied both species' honor codes while preventing violence. Without him, both sides had reverted to their ancient hostility, target their supply depots. Thixner ordered, his voice heavy with regret even as he gave the command. He didn't want this war, but his government demanded action, and there was no neutral party to propose alternatives. The Kelthron responded with devastating efficiency, destroying 2 Dravix colony ships full of civilians. Thousands more died in the opening volleys of a conflict that should never have started across the galaxy. Similar disasters multiplied. High Chancellor Vexinen stood in the council chamber that now held barely half its normal attendance. 6 species had formally withdrawn from the council in the past month, declaring they could no longer afford the membership fees when they received no benefits in return. The remaining species were barely holding their own territories together. The economic situation is catastrophic, the Volnori trade minister reported, her voice wavering. Without human financial coordinators, the trading networks have collapsed into chaos. Currency exchanges are failing, and 3 major banking institutions have declared bankruptcy. A human analyst named Patricia Coleman had designed the economic modeling systems that predicted market crashes. Another human, Gary Nelson, had created the dispute resolution protocols that prevented trade wars. Both were gone. Medical update. Dr. Shenka added, and her news was even worse. The plague on Velner Prime has spread to 6 other worlds. We've lost over 40,000 people. And we still cannot synthesize effective treatments without human research. Methodology. Chancellor Vexinen's hands trembled as he gripped his graviton staff. What about the infrastructure failures? The station's chief engineer, a crystalline Dravix named Shikskor, brought up a holographic display showing systems across council space. Critical failures are occurring daily. Power grids designed by human engineer Brandon Walsh are breaking down because we don't understand his optimization algorithms. Water. Treatment facilities built using human methods are failing. Atmospheric processors on 12 colony worlds are operating at reduced capacity. The list went on and on. Environmental monitoring systems collapsing, transportation networks breaking down, communication relays malfunctioning, all because humans had quietly maintained these systems for decades while everyone else took them for granted. The criminal situation is worse than the war, Admiral Krethner reported grimly. Without human law enforcement coordination, pirate clans have formed a coalition. They control 17 shipping lanes now. Slave trafficking has increased by 300%, and smuggling operations are openly operating in sectors that were clean 5 months ago. Ambassador Zixter had stopped sleeping. Every day brought new disasters, and every disaster traced back to human absence. He spent his nights reviewing archived council sessions, watching decades of humans trying to help while being systematically ignored. In one session from 12 years ago, a human safety inspector named Greg Martinez had warned that the station's emergency life support system had a critical design flaw. The council had thanked him for his concern and then voted to postpone any changes due to budget constraints. Last week, that same life support system had failed on a mining station, killing 200 workers. In another session, human doctor Amy Rodriguez had proposed creating a galactic disease monitoring network to catch pandemics early. The council had dismissed. It is unnecessary since major outbreaks were rare now. 6 worlds were suffering from plagues that might have been contained if that network existed. Human military advisor Timothy Ross had suggested updating defense protocols to address emerging pirate tactics. The council had decided their existing security was sufficient. Now those same pirates were terrorizing half the galaxy. Every warning ignored, every suggestion dismissed, every offer of help treated as if humans were servants presenting their duties rather than partners offering their expertise. The most damning evidence came when a junior analyst discovered archived personal logs from Human Council members. Ambassador Helen Price had written in her final report, "We have tried everything: diplomacy, friendship, patience, excellence. Sacrifice. Nothing we do earns us respect or equal treatment. We are useful tools to the Council, not valued partners. Our people deserve better than to serve those who see us as inferior. Another human delegate, Commander Elisa Grant, had documented every time human military personnel had saved Council forces from disaster. List covered 47 pages. Not once had their actions received official recognition or thanks. Merchant Coordinator Daniel Hayes had kept meticulous records of how human traders absorbed losses to keep supply chains functioning during crises. Calculated that humans had sacrificed over 8 trillion credits in potential profits to maintain galactic economic stability. Council had never acknowledged this sacrifice because they had never realized it was happening. Dr. Kevin Morgan's research notes showed that he had discovered cures for 17 different diseases, but had given the formulas to Council species for free. Any other species would have profited enormously from such medical breakthroughs. Humans had simply shared them because people were dying. Zixter felt something break inside him as he read through document after document. His people, the proud Cathrians, had a saying, "Honor is measured by how you treat those who cannot harm you." By that measure, the Galactic Council had no honor at all. They had treated humans terribly, precisely because humans couldn't or wouldn't fight. Back humans had responded not with violence but with dignity. They had simply left. "We need to take responsibility," Zixter said during the next emergency session, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Stop blaming each other and face the truth. We drove the humans away through our own arrogance and prejudice." "That's ridiculous," one delegate protested. "We never mistreated them. We did worse than mistreat them," Zixter shouted, his calm finally breaking. "We took everything they gave us and treated it as if it meant nothing. We dismissed their warnings, ignored their expertise, and rejected their requests for basic respect. I personally voted against UN proposals 17 times. 17 times when humans tried to help us. And now we're suffering from every single problem they warned us about." The chamber fell silent. "I have reviewed the data," Zixter continued, his voice now steady but filled with shame. "Humans asked for 3 things before they left: equal voting power proportional to their contributions, consultation on decisions affecting sectors where they provided support, and basic respect as partners. None of these requests were unreasonable. We denied all of them because we saw humans as inferior despite all evidence to the contrary." Chancellor Vexinen, looking decades older than he had 4 months ago, finally nodded. "Ambassador Zixter speaks truth. This council failed humanity, and now we are paying the price for that failure. Can we offer them better terms?" Someone asked hopefully. "We tried," Krethner said flatly. "They won't even speak with us." The reality settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. The Council had destroyed something precious through casual cruelty and unthinking arrogance. Humans hadn't left because they were weak. They had left because they were strong enough to walk away from people who didn't value them. The Galactic Council had learned too late that the quiet ones, who did essential work without seeking glory, were often the ones holding everything together. Now, those quiet ones were gone, and the galaxy was falling apart without them. Only question remaining was whether the Council could change enough to deserve a second chance, and whether humanity would ever trust them again. 7 months after humanity's departure, High Chancellor Vexinen stood in a council chamber that looked like a tomb half. The seats remained permanently empty, now species that had withdrawn from the council or collapsed entirely without the infrastructure humans had maintained. The great dome overhead, once filled with holographic displays showing a thriving galactic civilization, now showed mostly red warning indicators and distress signals. Vexen had aged visibly in these months. His once proud bearing had crumpled under the weight of failure and loss. "I am calling this session to order," he said quietly, though there was barely anyone left to hear him. before we begin. There is something you all need to see." He activated the central display, and a message began playing. It was a recording that humans had left behind. Programmed to deliver after 6 months of their absence, Senator Paul Griffin appeared on the screen. A middle-aged human man with tired eyes and a sad smile. "If you are watching this," he began, "then 6 months have passed since humanity left Council space, and you are likely experiencing significant difficulties. We did not leave this message to gloat or to say, 'We told you so.' We left it because we wanted you to understand." The chamber fell silent as Griffin continued. "Humanity joined the Galactic Council 47 years ago with hope and excitement. We dreamed of partnership, of learning from older species, of contributing to something greater than ourselves for the first few years. We believed that dream was possible, but slowly, we realized the truth. You did not want partners. You wanted servants." Griffin's expression showed more sorrow than anger. "Every time we proposed improvements, we were dismissed as presumptuous youngsters. Every time we warned of dangers, we were called alarmist. Every time we celebrated our achievements, we were told we were arrogant. Yet when disaster struck, you expected us to fix them. When wars erupted, you expected us to mediate them. When people were dying, you expected us to save them." Ambassador Zixter felt each word like a physical blow. "We did all of this willingly at first," Griffin went on, "because we believed that our contributions would eventually earn us respect and equal treatment. We were wrong no matter how much we gave, how hard we worked, or how many lives we saved. We remained second-class members of this council." The recording showed Griffin looking directly at the camera. "So we left, not in anger, but in exhaustion. We left because staying was slowly breaking our spirit. We left because we finally understood that you would never see us as equals. We left because our people deserve better than to serve those who viewed them as inferior." Dr. Amy Rodriguez appeared next, a human scientist who had developed treatments for dozens of diseases. "We shared our medical research freely because we believe knowledge should not be hoarded when lives are at stake," she said. "We did not patent our discoveries or demand payment because we thought we were building a better future for all species. Now you understand the cost of that generosity without our ongoing research and adaptation. Those treatments cannot evolve to meet new challenges." Another human, General Marcus Liu, spoke from what appeared to be a military command center. "Human forces participated in peacekeeping operations across the galaxy. We mediated conflicts, protected trade routes, and responded to emergencies. We lost thousands of our people doing this work, and not once did the Council officially acknowledge their sacrifice. You took our protection for granted, assuming it would always be there. Now you see what the galaxy looks like without it." More humans appeared, each one explaining their role and why humanity had chosen to. Lead engineer Brandon Walsh described the infrastructure, systems he had designed, and how they required understanding of human problem-solving methods to maintain financial. Analyst Patricia Coleman explained the economic models she had created and why they couldn't function without human oversight. Each testimony was calm, factual, and devastating in its honesty. Finally, Ambassador Helen Price appeared, the woman who had given the final speech before humanity's departure. "We are not abandoning the galaxy out of spite," she said. "We are choosing ourselves for 47 years. We chose you over our own well-being. We sacrificed our people's time, resources, and lives to help build a civilization that would not grant us equal standing. That ends now." Price's expression softened slightly. "We hope that this experience teaches you something important, that every species has value, that contributions matter more than age or size, that respect must be earned through action. We hope you build a better council, one that treats all members as true partners." But we will not be part of that council unless fundamental changes occur. The recording ended with a simple message. Humanity wishes you well, goodbye. The council chamber remained silent for a long time after the message finished. Chancellor Vexinen finally spoke, his voice cracking with emotion. They tried to tell us every step of the way. They tried to make us understand, and we refused to listen. He looked around at the few remaining delegates. I am formally proposing that this council accept full responsibility for driving humanity away. Vexinen announced, no more excuses. No more blame. We failed them. We failed ourselves. And we must own that failure if we ever hope to rebuild. What good does accepting responsibility do now? Someone asked bitterly. The damage is done. It does no good at all if we stop there. Ambassador Zixter interjected, stepping forward. But if we use this as a starting point for genuine change, then perhaps we can salvage something from this disaster. He pulled up a document he had been working on for weeks. I propose comprehensive reforms, he said. First, voting power in any future council must be based on contributions and participation, not just population. Second, all species must have veto power over decisions that directly affect sectors where they provide significant support. Third, mandatory respect protocols, ensuring that all members are treated as equals, regardless of their species, age, or size. The reforms continued anti-discrimination measures, transparent appreciation systems for contributions, regular audits to prevent any species from being taken for granted again. These changes should have been implemented 47 years ago when humans first joined. Zixter said, they asked for these exact things, and we denied them. Now we must implement them anyway, not just to win humans back, but because it's the right way to govern, slowly, painfully. The council began the process of transformation. Species that had opposed reforms before them, having learned through bitter experience what happened when good partners were driven away. Younger members of various species, who had worked closely with humans and remembered their kindness, pushed older delegates to truly change. Monuments were erected across council, space honoring human contributions. Educational programs were established to teach future generations about the mistakes that have been made. The council even invited independent species, those humans had befriended outside council space, to testify about human character and achievements. One such species, the Irini, sent a representative who said, humans helped us develop our agriculture when we faced famine. They asked for nothing in return. They treated us as friends when your council barely acknowledged our existence. You had something precious, and you threw it away. 6 months of intensive reform work culminated in a complete restructuring of council operations. The new system guaranteed equality, recognized contributions, and built-in protections against the kind of casual discrimination that had driven humans away. Now comes the hard part, Vexinen said during the session where the reforms were finalized. We must ask humanity if they will even consider giving us another chance. They refused before. Krethina reminded him. They refused before because we had not changed. Zixter replied, now we have proof of real transformation. Whether it is enough remains to be seen. Council voted unanimously to send another delegation to human space. This time they would not go with demands or expectations. They would go with humility, evidence of change, and a simple request. Please talk with us, Ambassador. Zixter volunteered to lead the mission, had voted against humanity 17 times. Now, he would spend the rest of his life trying to make that right, if humanity would let him. Ambassador Zixter's ship waited at the border of human space for 3 days before receiving permission to enter. He used the time to review his speech, rewriting it dozens of times, before finally accepting that no words could truly express the depth of the council's failure, or the sincerity of his regret. On the 4th day, Captain Vincent Shaw's voice came through. You may proceed to New Terra Station. You will be met by human representatives. There are no guarantees beyond that. The ship moved slowly through human space, and Zixter noticed immediately how different everything looked. Human colonies thrived with advanced infrastructure. Defense stations bristled with impressive weaponry trade. Ships moved in organized patterns that spoke of efficiency and prosperity. Humanity had not merely survived their departure from Council space, they had flourished. New Terra Station was magnificent, easily rivaling Unity Prime in size and surpassing it in elegance. When Zixter's shuttle docked, he was met by a security detail that was professional, but not particularly welcoming. They escorted him to a meeting room where several humans waited. President Laura Mitchell sat at the head of the table. A woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing, Admiral Vincent Shaw, stood nearby, his posture suggesting he was ready to end this meeting at any moment. Dr. Nathan Price, a civilian scientist who had worked on several joint projects before the departure, sat to the president's right, and there, somewhat surprisingly, was Ambassador Helen Price, the woman who had given humanity's final speech to the Council. President Mitchell, Admiral Shaw, Dr. Price, Ambassador Price. Zixter greeted them formally, using the human custom of naming each person. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "We agreed to listen," Mitchell corrected. "Nothing more," Zixter nodded. Accepting the boundary, "I have come to deliver a formal apology from the Galactic Council," he began, his 4 eyes meeting hers steadily. "For 47 years, we treated your species with disrespect, dismissed your contributions, ignored your warnings, and took your sacrifices for granted. We failed you as partners, as colleagues, and as fellow sentient beings." He paused, making sure his next words carried full weight. "I personally voted against human proposals 17 times during my tenure as ambassador, 17 times when your people tried to help us to improve Council operations, to prevent the disasters we are now experiencing. I was wrong every single time, and I carry that shame with me." President Mitchell's expression didn't soften, but she gestured for him to continue. Zixter activated a holographic display showing the Council's reform documents. "The Galactic Council has undergone comprehensive restructuring," he explained. "Voting power is now based on contributions and participation rather than just population size. All species have veto authority over decisions affecting sectors where they provide significant support. Mandatory equality protocols ensure no species can be systematically dismissed or disrespected." He showed them the anti-discrimination measures, the contribution recognition systems, the accountability structures. These reforms are already implemented and functioning. Zixter continued, "We did not create them as a bargaining chip to bring humanity back. We created them because they should have existed from the beginning." Dr. Nathan Price leaned forward, studying the documents carefully. "These reforms match almost exactly what we proposed years ago." "Yes," Zixter admitted. "They do. We should have listened then. We are listening now, even though it is too late." Ambassador Helen Price spoke for the first time, her voice measured. "Why should we believe this is genuine rather than desperate promises you'll abandon once you have our help again?" It was the question Zixter had been expecting and dreading. "You should not believe based on promises," he said carefully. "You should believe based on evidence." He brought up records showing how the Council had operated for the past 6 months under the new system. Species with small populations but large contributions now had real power. Decisions were made collaboratively rather than by majority. Dominance contribution records were maintained publicly and honored officially. The Council nearly collapsed without you, Zixter said honestly. "We lost half our member species. Our infrastructure failed. Our economy crashed. Conflicts erupted everywhere. We learned in the hardest Way possible that a community only functions when all members are valued equally. He looked at each human in turn. We cannot undo the past, and we cannot erase the hurt we caused. Zixter concluded, but we can promise that the council you left no longer exists, whether that matters. To you is your decision to make. The room fell. Silent President Mitchell exchanged glances with her advisors. We need time to discuss this, she finally said. You'll be given quarters on the station. We'll contact you when we're ready. Zixter spent 2 days in those quarters, not knowing if he would be sent home with rejection or given a chance to negotiate when the call finally came. He returned to the meeting room to find more humans present. Dr. Kevin Morgan was there. The medical researcher who had saved countless lives, Brandon Walsh. The engineer whose infrastructure designs the council still couldn't fully understand, Patricia Coleman. The financial analyst whose models had stabilized entire economies, Commander Lisa Grant. The military liaison who had trained thousands of council officers, Daniel Hayes. The merchant coordinator who had kept supply lines functioning through multiple crises, President Mitchell spoke. We've reviewed your reforms, consulted with our experts, and debated extensively. Humanity will agree to selective cooperation with the reformed council. But on our terms, she laid out conditions that were firm but fair. Humans would return to council space gradually, starting with humanitarian missions and emergency support. Human personnel would have guaranteed autonomy and protection from council oversight. Any species mistreating human representatives would lose access to human assistance immediately. Humans would maintain independent alliances and territory regardless of council membership. Human veto power would be absolute on any matter directly affecting human interests. Furthermore, Admiral Shaw added, if we ever feel disrespected or taken for granted again, we will leave permanently this time. This is not a threat but a promise. Zixter listened carefully, understanding that humanity was negotiating from strength rather than need. These terms are acceptable, he said without hesitation. The council needs humanity far more than humanity needs the council. We understand that now. Dr. Nathan Price studied him. What happens to species who still view humans as inferior? They have been removed from positions of authority. Zixter replied, the younger generation that worked with humans and valued them is now in power across most council species. Old prejudices are being actively dismantled. The negotiations continued for another week, hammering out detailed agreements that protected human interests while allowing cautious cooperation. Finally, President Mitchell stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. We'll give you a chance, she said as Zixter carefully returned the gesture. But understand this, we are not the desperate species that joined your council 47 years ago. We are not asking for acceptance or approval. We are offering partnership as equals. And if that partnership fails, we will be fine on our own. We understand, Zixter replied, and we are grateful for the opportunity. 3 months later, the first human ships returned to council space. They were greeted with genuine celebration, this time species that had worked with humans and missed them. Younger generations who had learned from humanity's absence. Reformed leaders who understood what they had almost lost forever. Commander Lisa Grant stepped onto Unity Prime Station and was immediately surrounded by former students who expressed how much they had missed her. Guidance Dr. Kevin Morgan was escorted to emergency medical facilities where doctors practically begged for his assistance with ongoing plague treatment. Daniel Hayes found himself coordinating with merchant captains who admitted they had never appreciated his quiet efficiency until it was GA Ambassador Sarah Kim, humanity's new representative to the council, gave the opening address. She stood at the podium where Helen Price had stood a year before. But this time, the room was silent with respectful attention. Humanity returns not because we need you, she stated clearly, But because we believe in the possibility of genuine partnership, we will work with you, collaborate with you, and help build something better. But we will do so as equals. And we will accept nothing less. The council members rose and signaled their agreement in their various ways. Shikster watched from his seat and felt something he had not felt in months. Hope the quiet ones had returned, but they were no longer quiet about their value and their boundaries, and the galaxy, humbled by their absence, was finally ready to truly listen.